All right, to come up on the, play the video. All right.
Perfect. 5 o'clock.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I take so much pride in...
What is it about the Negro?
I take so much pride in presenting that piece to you because of the fact that Martin Luther King explains the struggle of the American black man. And when you learn your history, you understand slavery and what it did to us psychologically and physically, you can understand how we have never been given a fair shake in any instance. And we're talking about integration as it's prevalent in our society today. And this is the land of the free, when Martin even brings it out that we're the only immigrants that were forcibly brought here and never given a really opportunity to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And we actually built this country. The foundation of this country was built on free labor. Now, we're talking about Martin Luther King, and we have with us today Ron
NACLERIO.
Ron NACLERIO. Ron is the son of the surgeon that saved Martin Luther King's life in 1958 when he was stabbed on a book signing on 125th Street. I forgot which store it was.
Bloomstein's.
Bloomstein's of all places, where I, as a kid, went to see Santa Claus.
Wow.
As a kid, we all went to Bloomstein, right there in the middle of 125th Street. Everybody had an account at Bloomstein's in the 40s and 50s, right?
That's right.
And of course, Leroy, oh boy, we can know. Leroy Baylor.
I've been on the planet.
All right. Leroy's having a birthday tomorrow, and I have a birthday Saturday, and we'll both be 78 years old.
Wow.
Well,
happy birthday.
All right.
Yeah.
Proud to the people.
Another 50, 60, 70
My
more.
secret, man.
The secret is, I think, a belief in God. That's the only reason I'm still here. That
That's
quelled
right.
the demon in me. That quelled the demon in me, because I was quite angry at the planet. But I came up with a mother that was all loving and sharing, and that was my God. Her spirit is half of my DNA, so whenever I get angry, and I think of her and I cool myself out. The better angels take over.
Amen.
But I'd like to know how this all affected you. As I see Martin Luther King as a black Jesus. All right. Nobody really appreciated Martin until he was dead and gone. Like all our heroes. All right. Nobody appreciated Malcolm until he was dead and gone. When you're in the midst of it, you don't really understand how powerful it is. But Martin just explained the history of black people in this nation by that simple explanation that we were never given a chance. So you can understand the anger of black people. All right?
Well, I've been coaching 38 years at Cardozo High School, and I would say 98, 99% of the young men that I coach are African Americans. My father was a great, great heart and lung surgeon. He devised how to put the pacemakers in, and he, I think, instilled in me good or bad. I never looked at color. I never looked at race. I never looked at religion. I still don't. And I don't think I ever will. You know, and it's probably hard sometimes when you are a certain way, it's hard to understand why somebody else is another way. Like, I would never, ever take anybody's life. And when you see these people, like what happened near India, just people going out and killing them, and like, I can't fathom that, because I would never do that in my wildest dream. I mean, if my mother was still alive, may God rest in peace, she passed away April 2nd of 2018. Granted, if somebody had a knife to her throat or a gun to her head, yeah, maybe out of anger and trying to save her life, I would do something that, you know, to save her life. But I mean, I can't believe, like, walking down the street today, some of the things I've seen, I hear, and things people do. It is just amazing. And to me, I don't look, like I said, color. To me, the greatest American that ever lived was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Amen. Tell us about the instance where your father saved his life.
Well, my father grew up in Brooklyn, Bushwick, and in those days, there was no such thing as becoming a famous musician or a baseball player. In fact, a baseball player then, if you were in the majors, you had to get a job to supplement your income.
Right. Back in those.
So
we're talking what years? We're talking the 50s?
40s, 50s.
40s, 50s.
So my father realized that the way of doing it was education.
Right.
And he went to Jamaica High School, then he went to Long Island University, downtown Brooklyn, and then he wanted to become a doctor. And he got into Marquette Medical School. And he didn't want to just become any doctor. He wanted to become a heart and lung surgeon. And he ended up devising how to put the pacemakers in, wrote many, many books on how to teach it, because if he learned, he knew how to do it, it was his calling to teach other doctors. And it was September 20th, 1958. My father was all jazzed up in a tuxedo, taking my mom to a wedding they were invited at the Waldorf Astoria.
Oh, beautiful.
And he was at the Waldorf Astoria, just dropped off my mom. And I don't know how they did it, no cell phones, no beepers, but someone got stabbed and he was on call. And in those days, very, very few white people would go up to Harlem. But my father ended up working in the emergency room, ended up being chief of thoracic surgery there, rushed up there. And anybody who ever drove with my father would say when he's driving, he's Mario Andretti, the race car driver. It ends up, he walks into the operating room after he quickly changes his
All right, go ahead.
tux into the scrubs, and he sees Dr. Maynard, Dr. Cordice, hemming and hawing. Now, he did not know who the patient was.
Okay.
He quickly sizes up the situation and realizes the knife is touching the aorta. Now, for the general people out there, there's two types of stabbings. If you get stabbed in the chest and it's not near the heart, not near the aorta, the doctor can very easily remove it and you live. If it punctures the aorta as Dr. King said in his own speech, you end up drowning in your own blood.
Right.
But this was really, really 1 in a million. The knife was touching the aorta. If Dr. King sneezed or coughed, which he said in his own words, the knife penetrates, that's it. It was too dangerous, my father realized, to try to take it out through the front, because just by touching the chest, that sensation can cause a cough or a sneeze. Because like, how do you tell somebody not to cough or sneeze? So he quickly realized that somebody had to grab the bull by the horns, and there's a documentary that there was a police officer said that my father quickly realized he's not gonna talk about it, he just quickly removed 2 ribs from the side, went in through the side, managed to get the knife out and save Dr. King's life. The next morning, he got up early to go back to change Dr. King's dressing to make sure there was no infection to start. And that's when paparazzi snuck in and took the picture, and that's the picture that's went viral over the years. From that picture, I learned about my father, because growing up, I had the regular tie where, you know, like you have on, and I go, Daddy, you know, you have a bow tie, you always wear a bow tie. And he showed me the picture, and you see the reason why. If I bend over the patient, a regular tie would come out and bother him. So that's why he wore bow ties. But it was gonna take Dr. King approximately 3 months to be 100% healthy again. And about 3.5 months later, my father at his office, then it was on 35 East 35th Street, got a letter from Dr. King, and if you want, I'd love to share it
Yeah,
with you.
good time.
It is on stationary letterhead, Martin Luther King Jr., Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, 454 Dexter Avenue, Montgomery, Alabama.
All right.
The letter is dated January 6, 1959. Dear Dr. NACLERIO, ever since leaving New York, I have been intending to write you at least a note to express my great appreciation to you for all that you did to preserve my life. Your skilled surgery, coupled with your genuine concern for me as a patient, combined to bring me from a very low ebb in my life to blooming health again. Please know that I will remember your gestures of goodwill so long as the cords of memory shall lengthen. I hope you have received our gift by now. It is simply a little way to express our gratitude to you for all that you did to ease the load of a difficult period in our lives. With best wishes to you and yours for health and happiness in 1959, I am sincerely yours, Martin Luther King Jr.
Amen.
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 What was
safe to
amazing
say-
is that was Dr. Martin Luther King's first time ever in New York.
Yep.
And,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And my father somehow managed to hit it off with Dr. King and made him feel comfortable. And if you met my father, he had that charm, and Dr. King seemed to trust him.
Yeah.
And Coretta King seemed to trust him. And Coretta knew that Martin had to come back again to New York. And she was very, very skeptical. So there were a couple of phone calls made, Dr. NACLERIO, you know, Martin's gonna come up. Do you mind accompanying him? And it was the start of a 10-year relationship that really, really bloomed. In fact, I remember a couple of times, Coretta Scott King, Dr. King, my father and my mom, Gloria and NACLERIO, they would go out to a restaurant. There was a restaurant on 35th Street, a steakhouse. I think it was Chandler's that they went to. But, you know, that was back. But I met Dr. King several times, and one of the times that he met me, he kind of chided me because this is a pretty cute story. My brother, may he rest in peace, I found him dead July 20th, 2002. He was only 22 months old, and I was a little tot, maybe 5 or 6 years old. So I think my mother was in the bathroom, you know, bathing him, and my father was indisposed in the bathroom. And the phone is ringing. So they both yell, Ron, get the phone, Ron, get the phone. So I'm watching TVs, Ron, get the phone. So I'm running to the phone, who is it, who is it? So I answer the phone just like they taught me, Dr. NACLERIO and Mrs. NACLERIO's residence. Who's on the phone, who's on the phone? So I go, who's speaking? So they go, who's on the phone, who's on the phone? So I go, I don't know, some guy says he's a king.
You know what? those of you in the public need to watch this next roll in. It gives you the full story of Martin coming to Harlem. It's a very touching piece, so you might watch this. Run the second rolling. It's marked #1 King. All right? And we'll be right back to you. All right? This is good.
We need to know these stories because it strengthens us for the things we got to face.
You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written.
Dr. King coming to Harlem was not necessarily his terrain, you know, it's not where he operated. So here he comes into Harlem to promote his book, Stride Toward Freedom, at Bloomstein's store.
While sitting there autographing books, a demented black woman came up.
When she approaches him, she says that, "Are you Dr. King?" And he says, "Yes, I am." And boom, she plunges the letter opener into his chest.
The next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman.
This is just a very intensely troubled woman. All kind of demons are possessing her, gathering a storm inside of her that she had to unleash.
The attempt towards Martin Luther King was the schizophrenia, because at the time of her arrest, she was hearing voices to kill Martin Luther King. He was against her.
Miss Curry was mentally ill. Something set her off, and something manipulated her. Well, we have a lot of Miss Currys in our community today.
I heard a shout that from several women that Dr. King was hurt. I grabbed her immediately by her arm.
3 guys run out. Dr. King's been stabbed.
We rushed into the place and Reverend King asked, "Don't move. Don't even breathe."
I see a woman, hysterical, wanted to pull the knife out. I grabbed her hand, twisted it, because it pulled the knife out. It was over the aorta.
I never seen a person so calm in my life. He was almost like a saint.
And I looked in his eyes. We will get through this, I guarantee you. So he looked at me, smiled. So we will.
I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon.
So we got in there, and then the doctor, NACLERIO, he wasn't a timid guy. And that's what you needed. You needed sort of a renegade.
He went in there with Dr. Maynard and Dr. Cordice, and my father quickly assessed the situation.
The tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you.
This wasn't like we have 2 minutes. Time was of the essence.
Governor, the operation has been on for more than 2 hours. Have you heard any word?
I saw him a while back, and we're hopeful, but if not today, I can't say anything except hope for the best.
Blacks that had gone to school, studied medicine, even when they were discriminated against, saved the king, who helped to save a whole era.
I'm passionate about the project because we have a generation of young people who are really out of touch with our leaders, civil rights leaders, those who have laid the foundation.
If Dr. King had sneezed, so many of the things that Dr. King stood for and got moving would never happen.
They would have never seen the Voting Rights Act. Long before the Nobel Prize folk ever heard his name. Long before he was brought into the White House. Harlem, New York. And he went on from just a guy on his way up signing autographs to a guy that changed the world. But it could have ended in Harlem, but we wouldn't let it happen.
I want to say tonight that I, too, am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance to tell America about a dream that I had had if I had sneezed. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes
eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Audio Jungle.
Powerful.
So powerful.
That is so powerful. You know, I relish in listening to this last part. That was his last speech, the mountaintop speech, because I spent all of '67 in Europe. So I found a new type of white person. You know, a European white's completely different than American whites. And matter of fact, I spent it in Denmark. So that was, and we're talking about 1967 in Denmark. And that was heaven for black people. I mean, we were just an oddity that was to be experimented on. You know, we had a reputation. I mean, black men in general. So my exposure, then I came back to New York, and then '68, King was killed in April.
April 4th.
April 4th, right? And then Bobby was killed that June. So my heroes were gone. So I was, after being exposed and getting away from my own opinion about whites in general and seeing a different type of person, I was shocked by all this, especially when Martin died, because I was raised in the church and he was holier than thou. I mean, he was our hero. He spoke as we all needed to speak. Love should conquer hate. And with all this hate that came out in '68, and with the war going on, and all the drama that was happening, and having visited Europe, which was much more peaceful and didn't have all this radical, I was really thrown aback. I just didn't understand it. Like you say, I met some good people, and I couldn't understand how this could happen. But that traumatized me. That whole, you know, we were raised to make our parents proud of us. Leroy and I were raised in the same hood, the same neighborhood. We were raised to be good guys, you know, to be heroes. In the '50s, you know, we were raised to do your best. You know, there was no limit to what we could do. We believed in the American dream. We were living the American dream. Because after Martin was killed in '68, things changed a little bit. I think there was a little guilt on America that they had taken this savior away from us, a good guy, you know, a spiritual person, a person that, Black Jesus for me. I mean, you know, I couldn't take it. I mean, I was so angry, and I'm an ex-Marine, so I was get drunk and try to beat on people, and it just made me an angry person. And give us your thoughts on this.
I wanted to ask Ron, you know, when we see the film and we understand the circumstances under which your dad was contacted, did he say anything about he and your mom were running late? Anything that held him up? Because if he went, he would have had a pager, right?
No, they didn't have that then. It says somehow, I think, he you know, in those days you quickly go to a payphone, you call, is there a problem?
Exactly.
And
right.
I think that's what he did. You know, he looked out that when he found the spot like 2 blocks away, there was a payphone. Let me just throw whatever it was, a nickel then. Hey, this is Dr. NACLERIO. Oh, Doc, you gotta hurry up. And next thing you know, Gloria, I'll pick you up later, you know. And
okay. I was looking at divine intervention.
Yes. You know, you gotta.
How that happens and how we're prevented from going someplace and we have to stay home. Then a phone call comes in or someone knocks at the door, you know. But that having read some of the story on Google, how
Dr. Cordice,
and your dad, and then Aubrey Maynard was the guy over everything, and he said he would take credit for.
Yeah, he would. He wasn't fortunate. When Dr. King had the knife taken out, he wasn't even in the operating room.
Exactly.
In the documentary that will come out, we just saw the trailer. Reverend Cohen has all the information of exactly, you know, it was. And Dr. Maynard, there was a play that came out. he was chided in the play for trying to take credit. You know, my father was a team player, you know, but my father realized in that particular moment, he was the Michael Jordan doctor that had to save Martin Luther King. He couldn't call on Scottie Pippen because he realized that, you know, my father did tell me that when he got up close and he saw it, then he realized it was Martin Luther King. He didn't know walking in. And, you know, he quickly said, you know, I mean, it was a crazy world then, and Dr. Maynard and Dr. Cordice, if something went wrong, who knows how they would have been perceived. If my father made a mistake, what would happen? And you know what was weird? And I didn't know this, but my mother opened up, and my father would never say it, but there were times the phone would ring, my mother would pick up. Is this Dr. NACLERIO's residence? Yeah. Who's speaking? Well, just listen to this. Tell your husband the next time he saves up, we're gonna know. We know where you live. And that happened. That happened several times. That happened. You know, then your phone, there was no such thing as unlisted numbers.
That's what I was looking for.
And then I felt it a couple of times where growing up in Queens, I had a couple of white people tell me, why did your father save? And like, a what? And like, to me, it was like, my father saved a great American, like, you know, but there was that, and my father, he did get that, but my father would never tell my mother. But my mother never told my father those phone calls. That's why when the phone would ring for the next year or two in the house, my mother was nah.
Really?
Because she didn't know. Who was on the phone? You sure?
Oh,
you sure? Was it really? You know?
goodness.
So, you know, it's, and Martin, Dr. King and my father discussed that. Now, I didn't know that. I was 6, 7 years old, but as I got older, it was brought up to me, and my father. And I remember April 4th, 1968, my father coming home, and it brings back a couple of tears to mind, because every time I think of Dr. King, I think of my father.
Of course.
My father, I knew something was wrong, because my father was out of it, because he knew Dr. King was assassinated. My father went to Dr. King's funeral in Atlanta, and then when my father passed away, Coretta Scott King came up to the wake.
Oh, of course.
And she came, you know, in a non-descript manner, because, you know, you didn't want anybody thinking, hey, let me, you know. So she came unannounced.
Right.
And we were astounded to see her.
Yeah.
And October 23rd, 2015, his oldest son, Martin III, came to Cardozo to thank me. And originally, when the principal heard he was coming, you know, because he wanted to just speak to the kids, you know. So he says, how about speak to the whole school? So we had the whole school there. And we're a mixed school, you know, Black, Asian, Chinese, Puerto Rican, Indian, whatever. And,
Queens.
And when he spoke on stage and he thanked me and he walked over and hugged me, the place went wild. And then I have a lot of former players that live in Atlanta, and we decided, we have a reunion every year at Cardozo, but we decided 2 years ago to start one in Atlanta. And I have about 20 former players, 30 cheerleaders, so many people living down there. So when I called, 2 days before I was gonna go, I called the King Pavilion, and I spoke to Kennedy Mack, the family liaison, wanted to know if I could come by and see Martin. She goes, well, Martin's out of the country, but Bernice is flying in tomorrow. Let me get a message to her. And then a couple hours later, Kennedy Mack said, if you're coming, she would really love to see you. And I think it was July 28th, 2017. And I went there, and we, you know, when we hugged, because we knew. And so I said to Bernice, I said, Bernice, do you mind if I call my mom? My mom would love to speak to you. She was like, your mom's still alive, blah, blah. So I put them on the phone. They talked for about an hour and rehashing everything. And I overheard Bernice tell my mom that if your husband didn't do what he did, she wouldn't even have been born.
Right.
And later that day, I'm at the reunion party, and people are coming over to me, and like, you know, they treat me like a celebrity anyway, but this was like extra celebrity. I go, what are you talking about? I found, and they showed me, Bernice took one of the pictures we took and blasted it on social media. She looked up my background as the winningest coach in New York State history and said how proud she was, and you know, and it was great. So there's a connection that with the King family that the NACLERIO will have, you know, until the end of time.
Well, see, what I mentioned about '67 was that going to Denmark gave me an eye opener about white people. You know, I'd known nice white people in New York, period. I've raised around. But see, with the turmoil that's happening today, it's difficult for our kids to understand what's going on. And it takes people like yourself that do deeds and see a person by the content of their character, not by the complexion of their skin. And well, we know blacks have more problems with each other than they have with anything else. So we as black people have to, you know, solve our own problem, all right? Other than racism, because we amongst ourselves kill each other more than anything else, all right? And our disrespect for each other really, I mean, other people see that. So they lose respect for us because of the way we treat each other, all right? That's, without saying that, nothing can explain Donald Trump. I mean, it's difficult for anybody, any sane person being born and raised in New York, with the diversity of New York and the separation in New York. But of any place else on the planet, the diversity is such that it's difficult to understand, like you can't understand how people can hurt each other because of your environment and the people you're around.
You know, I understand in the basketball game, like when I was playing basketball, I played baseball, you know, I played for Cardozo, I was an all-city player, went to St. John's, was, you know, an all-Northeast player. I got drafted by the Chicago White Sox, and I got to the majors.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
but like, I understood, you know, I was really fast. So if I'm stealing second, which I led the nation in stolen bases my senior year, I led the New York Penn League in stolen bases in 1979. I understood if I slid into second and I slid and hurt the person's knee, I didn't do it on purpose. I'm not going in there with the spikes to say, hey, I'm sliding in there to rip a guy's knee. You know, I mean, it happens unintentionally. Or a collision at the plate, and that's part of sports. It's part of life. But to intentionally inflict harm, evil on another person, I mean, karma is a B-I-T-C-H.
Okay, right,
You know,
right.
and I like to think I've helped a lot of people, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two people maybe by accident I've hurt, you know, a kid that thought he should have started, that I didn't play as much, but you know, that's just part of
I want to make my point here about the change. Now, we're talking about the 50s or 60s. Now, let's update ourselves to Charlottesville and play number 3, and we'll go, and the rise of Trumpism, a demon in the White House. Number 3? Or is that 2? You all right? You got it? Yay or nay?
They got it.
Everybody else that does not have a torch, come up.
About the Confederate monument.
that Donald Trump was born and raised in New York. He's like 5 years out of Queens.
Jamaica.
He's a what?
Jamaica, Queens.
Jamaica, Queens, all right? And his father was a Klansman. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that.
He was arrested in Queens in the 20s at a Klan rally. And his grandfather ran a whorehouse in Canada in the 1800s. 1800s, all right? So you can see the lineage.
Lineage, yeah.
You can see the links all over the place. But right now, well, we saw him with the Central Park 5 in '89.
Yeah.
His racism come out. And it's amazing that he can be but he's a con man. We all know him as a con man. As a con man, he'd been working with the Russian mafia for years out there in Coney Island. And with the Italian mafia in New Jersey with the hotels. Nobody can build a hotel in New Jersey without being...
Casino.
a casino in New Jersey without being attached to the mafia. Now, we all know that, right? So he's got a history of being a gangster, a hood, a thug. And that's all he's doing in the White House. But the amount of people that voted for him, I can understand that he was saying, make America great again. But he was saying, make America white again. That's what he was saying. All right? Now, we all knew that. But all the Hillary haters were, and I think the majority of people in the Midwest voted for him because he was for white people. You know, I basically believe that. But when they discovered how wrong they were, and then nobody likes to admit that they're wrong. But how do you pull back from that? I mean, maybe you've had some exposure to people that voted for Trump and regret it, but still can't own up to it. Has that crossed your path?
You know what? It's amazing how I'm starting to see, as I've opened my eyes to more than just coaching Cardozo basketball, how, one, how you're brought up is so important, what you're exposed to, and a lot of times also where you grow up.
Right.
You know, like, I'm sure that there were white people that were scared to go to Harlem in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, just because of what they associated Harlem with. My father taking me there many, many, many times, whether it was straight to Harlem to check on his patients or to go to Columbus Hospital or St. Vincent's Hospital and then rendezvous over to Harlem Hospital and just see my father interact with all the nurses, a lot of which were black or the front desk. You know, that's the way I was exposed. So like I said, it's hard. And, you know, you wonder how nobody, I don't think any baby 2-3 years old is born prejudiced, racist. I mean, so there has to be some instilling in them somewhere along the line, like the KKK. I mean, like, are you kidding me? I mean, I've never, you know, some of the stuff that goes on is so mind-boggling that, like, you can't
This Nazis business.
Yeah, how do you talk? I mean, how do you talk about it? I mean, like one of the things that I started to, like, how does a person like Hitler come into existence? You know, I think that the good people would try to fight the Hitler, but unfortunately maybe Hitler just has too many people and it gets to the point where they realize if they fight him, they're going to lose their life or their family's going to lose their life. So, you know, it's like, unfortunately, the strong conquer the weak, even if the strong are a little wacky.
So how do you see Trump?
You know, it's amazing how I don't know much about politics, and I never really followed politics. I didn't really vote much. It's how even a politician, a non-politician, can come from just going out in a matter of a couple of months, go from not even being a politician to winning the biggest thing in the world, the presidency of the United States. Has to be, I would say, what the hardest job to get, because, but it's amazing how pro-Trump, anti-Trump, no Trump, there is a Trump. There's so many problems that that have to be solved. That, you know, like when it comes to politicians, they try to spread their view, their ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how a non-politician that wants to help, somebody like me, you know, I mean, I don't, when I help my kids, think, hey, I'm doing a political job. I'm doing the job that I think is the best.
That's right.
As a teacher coach.
Right.
You know, and I'm wondering if I ever did get into politics, which it doesn't faze me because I don't think I have to get a title to help people.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
and I love what I do. So, I mean, it's just, you know, I don't have the answers. I wish I did. You
What
know.
about you knowing that the Russians helped put him in the office? This is the most vital part. Putin helped, with his brainwashing and propaganda, put Trump in office.
You know what's weird? There's so many.
The Russians.
There's so many things that you hear that the way things are going now, are you hearing it and it's 100% correct?
Right.
Is it 50% correct? You don't know.
So you have some doubts about whether the Russians
No,
helped him?
I have an idea. I don't know because you read and you hear so much. That's why I don't get involved with certain things because I know that here. You're at a point right now, and this is what I don't like about society today, is people can't agree to disagree. You know, so if I think we should press, and my assistant coach says we should pull back and not press, we talk. But now it's like, it's gotten really, really ugly, and I don't know where we're headed. I mean, I never saw growing up in my teenage years in the 70s thinking that 70s, so you figure what, 40 years later, 50 years later, that the world would be like this. You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, I don't know.
I wanted to bring up the Charlottesville that we just saw, and how that gathering reminds me of the gatherings that would be pulled together against Dr. King. But they don't have a Dr. King to assemble against. So where is that coming from? And on the black side, when I talk about black side, I'm talking about black youth, they have no idea of the civil rights period.
That's right.
They have no idea that Adam Clayton Powell instituted all these laws that everybody benefits from. So I wanted to ask the sister here, what kind of consciousness do you find among the younger people than myself and Brother Gilchrist?
You know, oh man, oh my God, I may get emotional.
Well, you're the youngster.
I know, and I was like,
here.
Lord, let him not address this. But you know, I'm glad that you have addressed this because I also will repost this on social media and things of that nature because I do want to address this. I actually got to experience a lot of racism against me as a young person growing up. We just talked about this a little bit yesterday. Born and raised in Brooklyn. I'm Haitian American, first generation. My family got here for that American dream. We didn't come here to like steal from people. Immigrants don't come to like take over. They just want the opportunities that everybody else was given. And I'm glad we're talking about this because having him as my client actually expands why I do what I do and helps people understand because a lot of times people are like, Anaya, aren't you against white? I'm not against white. I just have been very hurt. And what's happened is when I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York, my neighbor was German, Italian, Jamaican, Haitian, Black American, and we all got along. My mother brought us down to South Florida, and I was called the N-word.
Oh.
I was
Welcome to the club.
I was attacked. I'll never forget one instance.
What year are we talking?
The 80s, no, 90s. This is the 90s.
Ooh.
And I was called a Haitian cat eater. I was called stuff like you would never imagine. And I'm like, oh yeah, and then the worst one was, you came on a banana boat. And I'm like, what's a banana boat? We flew down here from New York City, and we would fly back and forth to Haiti because my parents, you know, came from money. They came from a nice lifestyle from Haiti, but they just wanted more, you know, in the Americas. So long story short, I'll never forget, I'm sitting in class one day, and I'm in Christian school, and you would think the Christian community is better, right? Yeah, not so much. the kids I went to school with were very racist. This was in Lake Worth, Florida, in this community called, by the name of Green Acres. And I'll never forget one day when one of my classmates kept calling me the N-word. And from Brooklyn, one of the first things I learned how to do was fight.
Right.
Legit. So
Brooklyn.
I'll never forget,
Brooklyn,
all day.
yeah.
So I'll never forget, he kept calling me the N-word, and I'm like, doesn't the teacher hear this?
And this,
Nobody's doing anything. And here I am, and I'm like getting taunted, and these white kids are like now joining, and the first thing I could do was grab my pencil and stab them. And I didn't care what happened at that point, because I'm like, not only was he aggressive in what he was saying, but he was approaching me like he was gonna hurt me or something. And I'm little bitty, I'm only like 5 feet something, you know? And so at the time, I was like, all I knew was that reflex, bam. So the principal, I'll never forget it, brings me into the office and threatened to suspend and expel me. And I got in his face, and I was like, as God is my witness, if you try to suspend or expel me, I'll have every news camera at your school. I'm attending a Christian school. We're paying green dollars just like these white kids. And my mother is gonna stand up for me, and you don't want her Haitian butt down here. So do what you think you're gonna do, and you'll see the repercussions. And I was only in like 10th grade, but I didn't know at the time that I was gonna grow up and be an activist and an educator and speak up like this. I just thought at that moment, like, how dare you? How dare you? And so I went through a lot growing up, and like you, I actually studied abroad in London, England. And I traveled, in other words. And I'll never forget when I was leaving London, and mind you, I was dating and I was engaged to a Caucasian man at the time, but I forgot about what happened in South Florida, and I thought that there was no more, racism, being oblivious. And I think that's what we're going through in this generation, and that's what I'm getting at. Like, our people fought, and we probably think that we're okay now, and we're not. And I'll never forget, this is, 2003, I'm in London, and I'm about to leave with my sister, Latasha Hill, I love her, and I'm saying bye to my little community in London, because we studied abroad from Palm Beach Atlantic University. See, a lot of people don't know, I grew up in a community where literally I was associated with multimillionaires. Donald Trump's property was like across the street from my school on the island of Palm Beach. It's like, this is the community I grew up, and I went to school down there. And I didn't know how to be conscious, because there was no such thing as conscience. I had permed hair, and I thought being cute was the thing, and we didn't know about a lot of our leaders. Fast forward, I'm saying bye. I'm saying bye to all the people in the little community, and I lived right across from Hyde Park, around the corner from Buckingham Palace in my flat. Goodbye, everybody. I love you. I'll miss you. Cheerio. And then I'll never forget an African brother who was working as security in one of the flats that we lived in, because there was 27 of us, and then 2 professors that went to London for the study abroad program. And he pulled me to the side, and he like kind of grabbed my arm like this. And I said, I just want to say goodbye. And he's like, I'll never forget it. He looked at me in my face, and he said, sister, don't go back to that racist land. Don't go back to that racist country. And I said, huh? I was 21. He says, sister, if you go back, you're gonna experience a lot of racism you don't know. And I was like, what do you mean I have to go back? My family's there, I'm gonna get married. I have to go back, I have to work or whatever, and graduate. And he's like, just remember that America is not a good place, and there's a lot of racism, and you have more opportunities here with us.
wow.
Fast forward.
I'm here to say that the righteous people of America are going to uplift us out of this deep hole that Donald Trump has put us in. It's coming back.
It's coming back.
Well, first of all, talking about kids, kids unfortunately are mean.
Well,
and when you get 1, 2 kids picking on somebody, and one of the things that I try to do is I try to explain to the kids how when you see somebody less fortunate or not as, that has a deficiency or a disability, try to see their side. And, when I try to always answer in terms of basketball, when you say the youth of America, well, you know what? The youth of America today, when we talk about LeBron James being better than Michael Jordan, and I realized something. The youth, 15 years old, 20 years old, 25, they never saw Michael Jordan play. So like, how could you, it's like, like from the 60s, Oscar Robertson. Like, how do you? That's what I'm saying. How do you?
But this is what kills me. Like, and I'm glad we're talking about this again too, because we have to address it. Like, our young people don't understand. And we're completely oblivious. And that's why I do what I do as a business owner, as an activist. I'm under Reverend Al Sharpton for crying out loud, you know? And I try my best to educate those around me, and I try to get people now conscious, because from those experiences that I had, I can't change those people's mindsets, but I can change mine, and I can help others, you know, evolve.
You know what the
and
sad
grow.
thing is? So many young kids today don't value education. Well, education is valuable. I mean, I'm in the classroom. They don't value getting good grades. You know, like half of them just like, let me just get a 65 so I can pass,
And
so I
that's
can
another
move on.
thing.
I mean, like there's no like reward.
Social media.
Yeah, social media. You know, one of the
some bad television programs.
one of my
these days.
former players.
Fox News.
Fox News.
One of my former players, Rodney Harrison, has worked his way up. He's now chief of police, New York City. Played for me in 1988, and it is amazing how you waste so much time trying to instill stuff in kids that you think you're this close to getting them to success when they're here, because the gap, they don't want, they just expect, like, here, like I said, everything's basketball. Oh, I'm gonna take 5 jump shots and I'm gonna shoot the ball like Stephon Curry. No, Stephon Curry worked 15 years, 5 hours a day. You know, like, hey, I'm gonna study 2 minutes the night before a test, even though I cut for 3 weeks, and I'm gonna get a good grade. You know, it's not happening. You know, like the work ethic of society has, I think, is not there.
Dwindled.
There you go.
The work ethic I'm still working as a coach as hard as I used to. If we have a big game on a Saturday in the playoffs and I have a film of the opposing team and it's Monday, I'm watching that film not one time, I'm watching it 5 times.
I think you hit it right on the head, because the work ethic that we came up with is gone. I mean, we came up in a society that you had to work hard. There was no nonsense about. My father said, I remember I was good at basketball, and I said, my father was a baseball player, so he thought basketball was for sissies.
Oh, God.
So I'm in high school, you know, I had a good job downtown, and I told him, hey man, I got a chance to get on the team, I'm gonna go play some basketball. He said, you don't have time to play anything, you better get down and get to work.
But then,
and I was raised on a work ethic.
Right.
I mean, I was scared to go home without a job.
When I grew up, I and the people around me, we did a lot of hard work, hoping to get a little. Today, these youngsters do a little and expect a lot.
But don't forget, too, what we have and what we just recently seen. A lot of the affluent people, or those with money, like the young lady from Full House, paying their way through colleges. So what that does now, that decreases everybody's attention span as well as work ethic even more. Because think about it. You have these people, how long have they been doing this? From the beginning of time, but then they want to say the blacks are the lazy ones that didn't do anything. And let me say this too about the Caribbean community, and that's why I love these types of topics too. We were brainwashed to not think that black people were hardworking because of all the stuff that was perpetuated in the media and things of that nature.
And I'm here. Brainwashed that black people in America weren't hardworking.
Because everybody just assumed that after slavery, you know, black people just were gonna keep on working for free. No, but we have to work even harder to prove ourselves, and we still have to. Like even with what I went through in school and stuff growing up, that's why it still brings emotions.
That's the Willie Lynch syndrome.
Hello.
You
But
have
it
to
was
understand the
perpetuated
planned
so much.
genocide on spiritual people.
Yes.
See, when you're a spiritual being, people that are demonic are hell. I mean, people that don't believe in God don't even listen to a word I say. I say at every ending, the God in me loves the God in you.
Right. Yes.
But there are a lot of people that have no God in them.
None.
They have no concept of God.
And
I mean,
what do you do with them?
Well, you have to teach them. You have to
I
teach
know
them.
you try.
You
But
see,
I can't.
you
I
can't.
can't. Why
No,
don't they
no.
know?
See, our problem is,
I
we're
wanna teach those that
spiritual
are willing to
people,
learn.
and when you start to hate, and you start to get angry. Now, all of you remember when Trump first came out. I mean, I was angry, but now I've cooled out, and I understand that this is a test for spiritual people.
Yes, yes, it is.
This is a test for us. See, we have to take Martin Luther King's real spiritual energy.
Yes.
We have to say, you have to judge a person by the content of their character.
That's right.
You have to judge the content of the character. When I went to Denmark, I was in a socialistic country and there was no greed. I learned years later why they were so nice. Because of socialism, and you couldn't work too hard because they tax you to death.
Right.
And you took 4 weeks vacation, you had schools, and that's why they were so nice to me. Because they were peaceful, loving, spiritual people.
Speaking of spiritual, can I do a quick plug-in real quick? For our leader over at the National Action Network.
Of course.
This is where I got to meet.
A disciple of Martin Luther King.
Yes, Dr. Reverend Al Sharpton. I got to share that on this weekend. See, one thing I love about this brother here is that he teaches all about this, and that's why we do these rallies, and we're always so supportive. So on Saturday, April 27th, please watch at 8 p.m. on MSNBC on his show, Politics Nation. It's going to be really powerful, and it's entitled Not Just Black and White, Race and the 2020 Election. And I tell people all the time, if you're not on Reverend Sharpton's panels, you're not making it very far in politics. And I feel that, you know, he went through so much too. Speaking of stabbings, he was stabbed, you know, in New York and Brooklyn many years ago.
And he forgave the guy who stabbed him.
And the thing about him is his lineage and his walk is like very similar to Dr. King's, right? And why I bring him up and do this little plug-in for him is because he teaches like, a lot of people think he's a race beta and he, you know, is against white. No, it's the God in him that teaches us to love the God in those. Because if he is working with the mayor or anybody else, it's not a black and white issue. It's literally how do we better the people.
Yeah, you know, what I have most in common with Reverend Sharpton, you know, I've been with Reverend Sharpton 21 years.
That's right.
I'm his videographer.
I've never met him. There was one time.
Well, he's a disciple of Martin Luther King. I guarantee you that. I follow him each week. And the rallies are nothing but church.
That's right. Literally. We're going to get that meeting. We're going to get that meeting with him and Reverend, because guess what? Reverend is in the documentary, www.hsak.com, which is When Harlem Saved the King. Isn't that amazing? So we definitely going to have a sit down with him.
Constantly pops up. He's in my spirit.
Exactly.
In terms of the education and how their unmotivated children today there is an actuality of the dumbing down of America.
Correct.
And that concept and that reality was brought up by a lady by the name of Charlotte Iserbyte, I-S-E-R-B-Y-T-E.
She's the
dumbing down of America includes the Common Core, where the parent tries to help the child with some basic math and can't figure it out themselves.
Right.
Power to the people.
Yep.
God bless to Manhattanites. All right? Come back for we got a minute left for the Bronx. All right?
Okay.
So the dumbing down of America, folks can go into Google and pick up her name, Charlotte Iserbyte, or pronounced Iserbit or Iserbyte. The other thing is Dr. Leonard Sachs. Leonard Sachs, he's down in Maryland. He wrote a book about unmotivated boys, and unmotivated boys is across the board. Low achieving boys, unachieving, something like that. Leonard Sachs. And what's missing today is hands-on learning.
Hands-on. Well, you know, it's been an interesting experience. Thank you for coming, Ron.
You're welcome.
And as you see, every week we come up with something, well, something spiritual. You know, the God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for the more of the Gilchrist Experience. Peace and power to the people.
Yes.
And remember, God loves you.
Amen.
Thank you for the show, Bill.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Huh?
This was great.
Ron.
Great story.
That was good.
Great story.